touching that. Give me the remote. No, give it off.
Zach, what the bloody hell do you think you're doing? You really want to choke her out in a lot of fingers?
Yeah.
Now pull it tight. Oh, yeah, now she's in trouble.
Oh, wait, I know you. You're from that weird family, aren't you?
We're not weird.
We don't like wrestling.
How do you know if you've never been?
I've never had rectal bleeding before, but I'm pretty sure I'm not a fan of that.
How about I shove her head up your ass and then we can find out?
Hello, listeners, and welcome to episode 42 of the DNA Film Wars podcast. Today we are reviewing Fighting with My Family, written and directed by
Stephen Merchant, starring Florence Pugh. Sorry if we mispronounced your name.
I was going to say Pugh, but Dylan said no.
Lena Headey, Nick Frost, Jack Lowden, Vince Vaughn, and brief periods of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Very brief.
Very brief,
And
like
very
two
far
scenes.
between. Yeah. So.
Let's get into it.
Well, let's go ahead and say that I know I promised How to Train Your Dragon this week.
We saw a better movie.
Dylan hasn't seen How to Train Your Dragon yet. We have both seen this film that we're about to review, and I like this film better, and it's honestly probably the best movie I've seen this year so far.
It's actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. It was actually pretty good. I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah, so
and I'm not a wrestling fan, so
yeah, I'm definitely not a WWE fan. It's all fake anyways.
That's rude.
Banned from the podcasting world forever. Just kidding. I hope. Well, I think that pretty much summarizes our initial thoughts. So
yeah, so let's get into it.
Let's just jump right into it. So you've seen the opening scene in the trailer. They're little kids and they're fighting over the remote, and it instantly introduces them as a wrestling family because he has her in like a chokehold in his fault. Instead of breaking,
he's like, "What are you doing?"
He's like, "What are you doing? If you really want to choke her out, you got to do it like this," and like fixes his hold or whatever. And at first, it's established that our main character of Soraya. Is that her name in the movie, or is that her real name?
That's her real name, Soraya.
I thought she went by Brittany in the movie.
No, that's her wrestling name before she switches it to Paige.
Okay, well,
her real name's Soraya.
Soraya doesn't want to wrestle as a kid, but her family cons her into doing this like family wrestling event they have, and then we cut to her being age 18, I guess, and she loves wrestling, and her brother have this little group of friends that they are like teaching how to wrestle, including like a kid that's kind of drug dealing and they're trying to get him out of it. One's blind and they're trying to teach him how to wrestle. Her brother's name is Zach.
His wrestling name is Zach Zodiac.
And of course her father is played by Nick Frost. Her mother is played by Lena Headey. Lena Headey you may know from Game of Thrones as Cersei. Nick Frost you may know from all those movies he did with Simon Pegg.
Yeah.
Everybody else in this is Vince Vaughn obviously and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Our two main leads I would say are pretty new to the scene.
Yeah.
Haven't seen them around before.
No, not really.
But I'll go ahead and talk about the acting since we're on the subject of actors. I think everyone does really good. Even Vince Vaughn, whose career has fallen way down the drain, was really good in this movie.
Yeah, I was really, really surprised by Florence Pugh's character, or Pugh, or however you say her name. I think she did. Pugh. I don't know how you pronounce her name, but I think she did really good. I think she was excellent, honestly.
She's really good, yeah. And of course,
and they cast a pretty decent likeness of the actual person. I mean, they did a pretty good job with that. And
yeah,
like you said, Vince Vaughn is actually. He's pretty good in this movie.
I really felt his scene when he's talking about the guy.
Yeah, he's like telling her about a scene we'll get into here in a little bit. He's like has this whole like monologue about you don't want your brother to end up like this, and he's like giving all this crap, and come to find out it's actually him. He's like, anyway, I was that guy.
Let's get back on track with the plot. So we've established that they're teaching these kids how to wrestle, but their parents are running like this sort of wrestling league where them and a bunch of wrestlers who aren't good enough for the WWE are doing like this. Are they in Scotland, Ireland?
No, they're in England.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Norwich.
No, okay. Well, they're in England and they're doing like their own little like wrestling.
I think they call it the WAF, the World Alliance of Wrestling or something like that.
Yeah, and we actually have a really funny scene early on that I really like where Nick Frost's character of the dad is sitting down with this other wrestler, and he's on the phone with someone and like testing how much this guy will take.
He's like, "Hey, would you like take one of these to the face?" And he like holds up this trash can lid, and he's like, "I don't know, what's it feel like?" And he just smacks him in the head with it. He's like,
"Okay."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Would you take a bowling ball to the groin?" And
he's like, "I don't know.
Let me test it out."
He's like, "Breathe in and count to 3. 1, boom."
I really liked it. I think it's one of the funnier moments in the movie. It's really good.
Nick Frost is actually pretty decent in this movie. I liked him a lot. He's one of the better parts of this movie, honestly.
Definitely. So then we have her mother, played by Lena Headey. She's helping out. Is it established? I don't know if it's established in this scene that their little wrestling league is not doing well. He tells his wife,
kind of not making a whole lot of money.
Yeah, and he's like, I might have to go back to thieving because it's established that he spent some time in jail for robbing banks or something.
Stealing things.
I think he was robbing banks. I think he said he robbed banks. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, so they have these tryouts for the WWE.
Yeah.
Vince Vaughn is the guy, hosting the tryouts or whatever, and so of course our two main characters, Zach and Paige, or Brittany, or
Soraya, or whatever you want to call her at this point. But she does that multiple times in the movie.
Soraya and Zach go, and they go to these tryouts, and it looks like that Zach is doing real.
They're both doing like really well, yeah.
Yeah, the way they edit this together, Zach's doing really good, and he's helping his sister do really good, and everybody else is just kind of played for laughs,
sucking it up.
And at the end of the tryout,
Vince Vaughn's like, if I call your name, you're going with me to Florida. And he goes, Paige.
And that's it.
And then the rest of you, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
And she's like, you're taking my brother.
Yeah, she follows him outside, and she's like, you got to take my brother. No one deserves it more than him. And
which is also a scene from the trailer.
Yeah, and he's like, he says, the scene from the trailer, I'm sorry, Zach, but this is the end of the line for you. And she threatens to not go, and she starts to count down, or he starts to count down, like, if you don't tell me in 10 seconds that you want to go, then you won't go. And he gets down to like 2, and she's like, okay, I'll go. Because Zach's like, you're doing this for the family.
He's like, you're not just doing this for you, you're doing this for the family.
You've heard that line in the trailer, too.
Anyway,
so she is then shipped off to... Were they doing the training in Miami? Is that right?
The NXT trainings, yeah, somewhere in Florida.
In Florida, I think it's in Miami or something. And so that's pretty much the first act there that we just covered. So at this point, Dylan, were you invested in the movie? Were you liking it?
I think I'm liking it so far. They're doing a pretty good job of setting up these characters, which I guess are they're based on real people. Mm-hmm. And I'll give the movie credit for that. It does a really good job of setting up these characters and setting up this family and actually making you care about the characters. And you're like, all right, even if you're not like a fan of wrestling or anything, it's something that you can get behind because it's like, kind of an underdog story, like, like a Rocky or something like that, but not quite the same, I guess, at the same time. But I'm liking it up to this point. What are you thinking?
I agree. I really like the characters and the way they've established the characters up to this point. I'm invested in their story. I want to see where she goes from this point on.
And I mean, even though I guess the movie's kind of it's got its cliche moments and it's classic tropes of this kind of movie, and obviously where it's headed toward the end of the movie. It's still you still feel invested in these characters in this story. Yeah,
definitely. So we'll go into the second act, and the second act largely takes place here in
Florida.
Well, at least the first part of the second act takes place here in Florida, and it's like going through the training. And first, Paige is doing really well because she's from a wrestling background, and she knows what she's doing. But quickly, it's
goes downhill real fast.
She can't make friends with the models and the cheerleaders and stuff that are here trying out. She says they're just ass and tits, wanting to get on camera or whatever. And
she's like, some of these people are in it for like the cheerleaders and stuff are just in it, and two or three of the girls pop up like, I'm a model.
I'm a cheerleader.
Cheerleader.
Yeah.
She's like, oh.
Yeah, and there's this really funny scene. I think it's right here where Vince Vaughn is trying to get them to do like their intros or whatever, and one of the girls is like,
she's like, I'm gonna blow you.
And he's like, you're gonna blow me.
He's like, you're gonna blow me. She's like, out of the water. And he's like, now I got my 10-year-old kid sitting next to me. He's questioning things,
asking a bunch of questions I don't want to answer. Yeah, it's really funny. Vince Vaughn is funny as well.
Vince Vaughn is actually really good in this movie. I was really surprised by Vince Vaughn.
But there's a scene where they're practicing their wrestling moves, and the girl actually accidentally keeps hitting Paige.
So
So
she ends up slapping her.
And she's like, "That's what did she call it?"
She calls it a receipt.
A receipt. And Vince Vaughn's on to her like, "You gotta apologize. We don't do receipts here." And she's like, "Well, people can get hurt or whatever." But she ends up sort of apologizing.
And then Vince Vaughn like yells at her.
Yeah, and this is really what sets off the rift between her and the other girls.
Yeah.
And then, we go through all this, and there's a big scene before, because they're about to go on vacation back to their home for a week.
For a Christmas break.
Christmas break or whatever. And there's a scene where they're rolling tires across the beach, and Paige can't finish. And she doesn't give up. She doesn't honk the horn, but she decides that she's not gonna come back after break. Because by this point, to try to fit in, she's like
gotten a spray tan,
dyed her hair blonde, and she's trying really hard, and it's just not working. And
then she hears some people talking. She hears those girls talking about her, and she like gets up and confronts them about it. And she's like, and then one girl's like, we weren't talking about you. We're talking about my daughter. And she's like, oh, I didn't know you had a daughter. She's like, well, you wouldn't. You don't know anything about me.
Yeah, and all this. And while all this has been going on, we've had scenes intercut with Zach. He had a girl, but we were established at the beginning of the movie that he got his girlfriend knocked up. And, they had this pretty funny scene where the girl's parents, who are pretty uppity,
come to dinner.
And they come to dinner.
The father of his girlfriend is played by Stephen Merchant, the director.
Yeah, and they meet with Zach's parents, Zach and Paige's parents. It's a pretty good scene. But anyway, so not only is Zach got his girlfriend knocked out, they also have an older brother who is spending time in jail for beating somebody up.
Domestic, or a public intoxication and
assault and battery,
and stuff like that. Which we find out from an earlier scene that he also tried out for WWE and was rejected, and he started drinking and became an alcoholic and started getting into fights. And Zach kind of starts to fall into that same path and starts to act dumb and does stuff that he's not supposed to do. And
so anyway, so Paige returns home. I'm going to refer to her as Paige from now on because it's easy to remember. Paige returns home, and her dad has set up this little event where they're going to do this Christmas theme or Santa themed family wrestling event. She's going to be like the big star because she's in the NXT or whatever they call it.
Yeah, and she's supposed to win.
And
because they're scripted.
And Zach, we've established that he's had the baby. That his girlfriend has had the baby by this point.
And he's kind of
but he's kind of started drinking, and he's always moping around and stuff. And,
he's very depressed.
Very depressed. And they get into the ring and they get into this fight, and Zach actually starts to beat her up.
Well, we have a confrontation scene before they step into the ring between Paige and her brother Zach, where she's like, I'm not gonna go back, and he's like, what? She's like, I'm not going back. I'm quitting, and he gets a little pissy.
Yeah, and so then he gets mad, and he actually physically beats her up in the ring. And then they get out of the ring, and she follows him. He's like, why'd you do that for? And he won't answer, but he's like, did you tell our parents yet? And her dad walks in, and he's like, she's not going. And then she follows him further outside, and then he's like, do you know what it's like to have one dream in life and have your sister take it from you? And you've seen this in the trailer where she's like, it was my dream too, and all this. And
basically he's just he's angry and upset with her that she's quitting on something that has been both their dreams for so long, and she's just giving up on it like that. And she's really supposed to be doing this with her family. I mean, she's going there to to try to save her family from going into
poverty.
Poverty.
And anyway, he goes to a bar. He doesn't come home, so they all go out looking for him as a family. And he gets into a bar fight, but his dad walks in just in time and pulls him out of it. And what happens after that?
Paige goes back to Florida.
Yeah,
she decides that she's going to go back.
Paige, after a heartfelt conversation with everybody, she decides that she's going to go back to Florida. She does go back to Florida.
And she starts training harder. She goes back to her original look. And she goes back to her original look, and she shows up, and Vince Vaughn, she walks into the gym, and Vince Vaughn's standing there. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, well, you didn't cut me, and I didn't quit, so I'm here.
Before I forgot to talk about this. We were saying we were going to talk about the scene. I think it's before she goes back.
It's right before she goes back.
It's when she has this sit down conversation with Vince Vaughn, and she's like, why didn't you take my brother? And he's like, well, he'll just end up being one of the guys that is on the road for 200 days a year, constantly getting beat up to make the other guys look good. And one day he'll take a 30-foot fall onto a concrete slab.
Just to make another guy look good.
And she's like, you don't know that? And he says, I do know that because that guy was me. And it's like, oh. Poor Vince Vaughn.
Poor Vince Vaughn.
Is a metaphor for his career.
But it was actually a surprisingly good scene. I think Vince Vaughn did a great job.
He does a good job pulling it off. I was really... Because I've never seen... Well, I mean, I haven't watched all of Vince Vaughn's movies, but mostly he plays in comedies. And he's not really asked to pull off emotional scenes, and I think he does it really well here.
Yeah. But anyway, so we get back to Florida.
Yeah.
And Paige, she starts training, and she really gets into it, and you can tell that she's improving. You see her start to improve, and then we have this scene, similar to the one before when they're on the beach and they're going through this obstacle course, and she's having to flip tires. Well, she gets through it. She struggles a little bit, and then one of the other girls that didn't struggle before, she kind of starts struggling, so they go over there and help her, and they've all become friends and started to bond, and have been training together, and it's a team building moment.
Yeah. So
then we're pretty much come to the climax, or the end of the film.
Through the second act, how'd you feel about the second act?
I'm liking the second act. I think it had some really good emotional weight to it, like all these scenes between her and her brother where they're like having this confrontation, and he's upset with her about giving up on this once in a lifetime opportunity so easy. And I think that there's some great moments in there, and I think the acting is really well pulled off. I think that Florence does a great job, and I think even the guy that plays Zach, whose name I'm blanking on at this moment in time, I'm thinking it's Jack Lowden. Is his name?
Yeah.
I'm really impressed with his acting at this point too, and I think all this family dynamic is great during these scenes, and I really enjoyed the second act of the film.
Yeah, and I'll say the same thing. I think they definitely draw. I don't think it's I guess it is a part as funny as the first act. It keeps up the momentum. Like you said, the emotional scene, especially the one with Vince Vaughn, some of the ones where she's wanting to quit, or she's missing home. Or the confrontation with her and her dad. It's definitely a more serious part of the movie than the first act. I think they balance that comedy and that drama well here in the second act. And I really like it. I don't think the movie loses steam at all, really. No. So, like you said, now we're coming to the third act, which is her.
I guess the third act really starts after she goes back to Florida. So we're getting close to the end of this film.
She has we're going to her big.
They've basically all made it to the end, like the final stage of this NXT development league, I guess, for the WWE. And because they've all made it this far, we're gonna take you to Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
And so they all go to Monday Night Raw, and Vince Vaughn pulls her aside. He's like, hey, we need to talk to you. So, or no, they go to Friday Night SmackDown, I guess. Anyway, it doesn't really matter.
No, I think you were right the first time. Anyway.
I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't really matter what they go to. She gets pulled aside and gets taken to this box, and she sees, the crowd in the ring, and she's like in complete and utter shock. Anyway, The Rock walks in.
Yeah, we forgot to mention The Rock has shown up in one scene prior in the
tryouts.
When they went to the tryouts, and it is a funny scene because they're like, "Hey, it's The Rock," and he's like, "Hey," and he tries to walk away, and then they say,
"It's
hey,
like, oh,
Rock.
Mr. Rock, no."
And they do that like 5 times.
And every time you can just see him getting more and more frustrated.
Then he has that big speech that you see in the trailer. He's like,
"Shut your mouth!
Shut your mouth! You look like you just walked out of Oliver Twist, and you
looking like you haven't seen the sunlight in 20 years."
Yeah, it's funny. And but anyway, so this is the second scene with The Rock, and of course we also have the phone call that you've seen in the trailers.
Yeah, it's during this scene. He calls their family. He's like, I'm here with your daughter. This is The Rock, and he's like, prove it. And he's does his whole, can you smell what The Rock is cooking? And he's like, yeah, and I'm Vin Diesel, mate. And hangs up. And then Paige's like, oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Anyway, they call him back, and this is where we get the big news that Paige has been signed to the main roster for WWE, and she's gonna make her big debut on I think it's Monday Night Raw. She makes her big debut on Monday Night Raw, and she's gonna be fighting the current Divas champion AJ Lee for her title belt.
Yeah, and of course she gets out there, and at first, when they have their little bit with the microphones where they're, pumping up the crowd or whatever.
We actually have a pretty decent scene, I think, right before that, where she's in her locker room, she's getting ready to go out, and she's really, really nervous, and Vince Vaughn's character is banging on the door like, come on, you gotta go. And she's like flipping out, and then she gets a video call from her brother, and he like hypes her up basically and gets her ready.
Yeah, and this is their big like reconnection scene where all's good. Because by this point, their older brother has gotten out of prison, and him and Zach were on a jog, and the older brother was like, I always knew she could do it because she had the one thing I never had, and he was like, what was that? And he was like, you, Zach. And it was like, oh man, and by this point, Zach has started back up his
teaching people how to wrestle.
Kids how to wrestle and everything. And anyway, so she gets out there and she freezes and she can't speak. And then,
the AJ Lee just basically
grabs her by the hair.
Grabs on her, just starts beating the tar out of her.
Which, I mean, I don't know anything about the WWE. I'm not going to lie. Are these fights not fixed beforehand?
I think they're supposed to be somewhat fixed. I think the plan was for her to win, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, that's kind of what I gathered. But at the same time, maybe not. I don't know.
I don't know how that works exactly.
I imagine it was probably planned out that way, that she was supposed to win, just because it's supposed to be her debut, just trying to get her to win over the crowd. I think they expected her to try to win over the crowd with her like big thing at the beginning, but then she froze up, and they were just gonna let her win. But
yeah, I like I said, I don't know how WWE works. There are people a lot more.
I think it's scripted. I don't know if it's necessarily rigged or fake, but
yeah. So anyway, she wins. And she gives an emotional speech at the end
about how it's, I'm not just doing this for me. I'm doing this for my family.
Yeah, and if you ever feel like you're weird or whatever, and the whole weird.
If you ever feel like you weird or don't belong, this is for you.
Yeah. So, very emotional.
And then we get a whole monologue, like epilogue thing, or where it's like Paige became the youngest female to ever win WWE Divas Champion or whatever at the age of 21, I believe.
Yeah, like they do a lot of biopics where they have the text at the end telling you what they're all doing now. And then of course they have like actual home video as the or not home video, but video that they went in, I guess, and filmed before they started making this movie with the actual family. And I'll say that they did a pretty good job.
I think it is home video. I think it's supposed to be home video, sort of.
I think it's
they seem pretty young.
Some of it's home video, but some of it, I think that the camera crew actually went in and did interviews and stuff. I think it's a mix, but and I think they did a good job emulating this family. I don't know how super accurate the story is. I didn't go back and read the actual story, but I think it really works as it's presented.
I really, really enjoyed it. I was thoroughly surprised by how good this movie was. I didn't expect much going into it. We kind of just originally wasn't even really on our radar a whole lot. We kind of just we were planning, like we said, we were going to do How to Train Your Dragon 3 this week, and I didn't
How to Train Your Dragon The Hidden World.
We were planning on watching that, and I just didn't have the time to go see that. We were planning to go to see a movie, and we were like, you know what, why don't we go see Fighting with the Family, because they didn't want to watch How to Train Your Dragon again, which is fair. I'll watch it at some point. We were like, all right, why not? It'll probably be all right. And walked in. I walked out. I was like, "Wow, this is probably the best movie we've seen this year so far." Which, I mean, isn't saying much for February, but still,
late February.
Late February. It's definitely better than any of the January movies that we saw far in February. So I'll give it that. It's actually running up there.
I saw the two best movies I've seen this year so far last weekend: How to Train Your Dragon and this. How to Train Your Dragon would probably be second on my list so far this year. But we're not talking about that on this podcast. We maybe one day when they decide that they need to revive it, we'll go back and review the last three. But anyway, I guess we'll go ahead and say our rankings. So
go ahead and give it your rating.
So like I said, I really enjoyed this movie. It's the best movie I think I've seen this year. I think the characters are well developed. I think the acting is great. I think the choreography for the matches is really good. I think the story's really involving and moving. So just probably based on the fact that it's the movie I'm most impressed with so far of 2019, I'm gonna give it 4 fake wrestling matches out of 5.
All right. Well, I'm pretty much on the same page as you. I really, really enjoyed this movie. Like I said a second ago, I was thoroughly impressed and thoroughly surprised with how good this movie was. Acting is wonderful in this movie. I think Florence does a great job. Everyone does a really good job. Nick Frost is one of the high points to this, and even Vince Vaughn, like we've said multiple times, he does a great job for a fairly dramatic role as far as Vince Vaughn roles go. It's probably one of the most dramatic roles I've seen him in. Does a great job. Dialogue in this movie is great. The entire story is great. You can really get behind these characters and their story, or these people in their story, and really feel for them and be like, okay, I want to see what happens. What's gonna happen? I want to see what happens. What's gonna happen? You really feel for them, and I think that really helps boost this movie. So if I got to rate it on our scale of 1 to 5, I'm gonna also give it 4. To quote Zach's move, I'll give it 4 Zach attacks out of 5. That's his finisher move, I guess, in the movie.
Zach attack, yeah, that was great. All right, so I guess we'll talk about what's coming up here pretty soon.
I think next week we have our third entry into our Star Wars series, which will be the animated Clone Wars film.
Yep, it's on Netflix. If you have not seen it and want to refresh your mind on what it's like, I wouldn't recommend that. I'm excited.
If you want to see the show, watch the show.
Yeah, the show. I'll just say right now that the Clone Wars TV series is really good, but we'll talk about that next time. But I am excited because I have not sat down and watched this movie from beginning to end
ever
since it came out in theaters in 2008.
I don't think I've seen it since then either.
It's been 11 years since I've seen this movie. I can't believe a Star Wars movie has gone that far without. But you know what? To be fair, I've never watched the Ewok movies.
I don't want to watch the Ewok movies.
The holiday special.
I don't want to watch.
I started to watch the holiday special one time.
No, please. I'm so sorry.
I couldn't do it. I just couldn't make it.
I'm so sorry.
Through. But I guess I should turn in my Star Wars fanboy card. But
I think that's what we got coming up, and then after that, what do we got after that?
After that,
I think the next movie we'll probably be doing after that will be Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel. I think Us comes out pretty soon.
Us comes out, I think, the week after that, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah, and we got all the big movies coming out this year. April, Avengers Endgame
comes out at the end of the year, end of April. May 10th is Detective Pikachu.
They just came out with a new trailer for that.
Aaron's really looking forward to that. He's catching up right now.
I've indoctrinated myself into the world of Pokemon. I'm about 60 episodes in right now.
And the first movie in.
And I've seen the first movie. So having seen the first movie and then seeing the second trailer, I'm really intrigued. There's a big character coming back from that first movie.
Yeah.
But there's over 1,000 episodes of Pokemon. I still have over 1,000 to go. I'm not gonna watch all of that before the movie comes out, but I hope to get through a good quarter of it or so maybe before the movie comes out. So
you got till May.
Yeah.
Also coming out in May. What else we got? We got
Godzilla
on May 31st.
I haven't decided though if we're gonna review that on this podcast
we might do both.
Debut it on my new podcast that I still plan on doing, of course. And then we're doing this Star Wars look back series in anticipation of Star Wars Episode 9, yet to be titled.
God, I wish they would at least release a title for that movie.
Tell me the title. God bless America.
It really is starting to make me nervous that they haven't even released any title or like stills or images or anything. The best image that we've gotten is the one was the day that they wrapped filming, and it was like who was it? John Boyega and Daisy Ridley hugging.
Yeah. I'm not nervous. I think I trust that the movie will be entertaining. Because J.J. Abrams is back, and I know a lot of people didn't like The Force Awakens. I personally really like The Force Awakens, so but we'll talk about that when we get there.
I saw that 8 times.
I saw that 8 times in theaters. Yes.
Yeah, same. I saw it 8 times in theaters.
I've seen it several times since. But anyway, we're getting off track here.
I guess we're looking way farther into the future.
Yeah. Plenty more big movies coming out.
Tons of stuff.
Dark Phoenix.
Can you call that a big movie?
It's a movie. New
Questionable.
Mutants. All the movies that Fox is pumping out before Disney completes their takeover.
Spider-Man: Far From Home.
Is that this year?
July.
Oh yeah. Exciting. We've had
It'll be a big year for movies. Oh, June. Toy Story.
Toy Story and Child's Play. There we go. Yeah, really excited about.
Anyway, we got a lot of stuff coming out this year. I think it'll be a pretty good year for movies. So.
Yeah. So, is there anything else you wanted to talk about while we were sitting here?
No, I think like usual, I just gotta plug those social medias. We're up on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're at DNA Fillmores, all lowercase, no space, on all those platforms. So go ahead and give us a like or a follow and tell your friends about us.
Yeah, if you have any specific comments and or questions, we are at dnafilmwars@gmail.com, all lowercase. As always, we are up on all the major podcatching services that I am aware of.
We're also up on YouTube with our audio files.
Yeah,
so.
Please feel free to leave us a review on any of those platforms.
Preferably iTunes, because the more reviews or likes or ratings you give us on iTunes, the more people we can try to reach.
Yeah, the higher we go up in the rankings, which we're like at the
very bottom.
But that's okay. Success doesn't come overnight.
Nope.
Or within a few months. Or years. But anyway, as always, I'm Aaron.
I'm Dylan, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Everything rides on tonight, even if I've got 3 strikes.
Paige, I myself have come from a wrestling family too. I know exactly what it means to you. But don't worry about being the next me. Be the first you.
This moment